Okay, so there's a question from a client regarding a Rixson um, Uni-Chek closer is what it is. And what we're taking a look at here is what the Uni-Chek closer looks like. Uh, Three images that the client supplied to us, and the question is, can the client remove the door from the closer without causing some unintentional problem with the floor closer in terms of the arm, and can it be safely removed? So here's the pair of doors, a couple of Uni-Cheks, I imagine. No intermediate pivot, top pivot only. This Uni-Chek installation could literally be the mid-20th century easily. These are very old closers that have not been manufactured for several decades. So inherently the client wants to know, basically, can he remove the door from what the client calls the bottom hinge without damaging the closer itself and doing so safely without hurting himself? So the bottom line is the answer is yes, because this is a arm cap cover. When you remove that screw, the arm cap will come off. It will reveal a set screw that is holding the bottom arm, which is underneath the door here, mortise to the bottom of the door. It will reveal a set screw that you can then loosen. Don't remove it, just loosen it. So why the client wants to remove the door is because they're going to lay carpeting, apparently, and they need to find 9/16 of an inch distance, additional clearance from what there is now. The trouble with cutting the bottom of the door is that, well, you're cutting the bottom of the door. It may not leave enough wood or construction of the door remaining so that you have a door that's still sound in its assembly. So cutting off more than 1/2 of an inch could definitely give you potential for trouble of disrupting the integrity of the door or completely destroying the door. There could only be 3/8 of wood down there, or a 1/2 inch. And you take, because when the door was manufactured, let's say that it had 1.25 inches of wood before trim. And before trim, what that means is when the door manufacturer made the door, when the door was manufactured, before it went to the trimming saws to get trimmed down to the final size, they may have easily have taken 3/8 of an inch off. Well, let's say that that left 3/4 or 7/8 of solid lumber there. Well, let's say that the door has been trimmed in the past few decades, and now there's even less of that material there. And if you go to take off 9/16, you could really destroy the door. Now, maybe you won't, and I would absolutely inspect the bottom of the door by unhanging the door, putting the door carefully on sawhorses, and probing or testing the bottom of the door by removing that bottom arm and seeing how much solid lumber is there, even by possibly drilling a very small hole into it, or removing the screws from the bottom arm will likely help determine if there's solid lumber there. So generally what you have with a floor closer where you have an excessive clearance is that a longer spindle is a component of the floor closer when it's ordered from the factory. You're basically ordering the floor closer such that you're incorporating into the manufacture of the floor closer the intended required clearance. So 9/16 of an inch for clearance would not necessitate a longer than average spindle, but in an existing installation, it might cause a problem where you would otherwise need a longer spindle. So the client wants to put carpet. He's going to need 9/16 of an inch. Cutting the door may or may not be a problem. You may or may not have needed a longer spindle. But what I fear is going to be the trouble is when you have the door and you have that bottom arm that's mortised in here. That bottom arm is very likely flush, or it's recessed up into the bottom rail ever so slightly. So it's actually, let's draw it a little bit larger. There's just no way to, I should have opened up AutoCAD, I apologize. So that arm prep is going to look, well, for all intents and purposes, it's going to look like this. So that arm could be sitting in this area, okay, in here. When you go ahead and rip off that 9/16 off the bottom of the door, that arm now may ultimately, your depth of your prep is going to be shallower, obviously, if not completely obliterated, and that arm may need to sit surface mounted or semi-mortised, or the big problem would be is that where the spindle's coming out and what you've removed off the door, the arm now where it has to sit will not make contact with the bottom of the door, meaning you're going to have to build a shim underneath here. And of course, none of that is factory recommended or recommended at all for a proper installation. Actually placing some material between where your arm is going to sit, I'm sorry, that looks awful, where your arm is going to sit here and the bottom of the door. So that's all going to require exploring the existing door construction and how much, to what depth the arm is currently mortised to. That may not be possible for you to get that additional room there at all. Now, the client's original question is, can he do it safely? And the answer is absolutely. And here's the bottom line. These arms, back to paint, this closer body is a goofy looking one. Actually, let me do it even better. Let's open up the Rixson documentation. There is a document. If you find the manufacturer's page in our site, go anywhere where it says manufacturers and Control F for find, go to Rixson, and you'll find Rixson. There's a document on this page that's called Identifying the Product That You Have, and it's right here. Well, currently anyway. Rixson, Identifying the Product You Have. And I think the Uni-Chek is about in the middle of the catalog. Yeah, it is, page 9. So it's this goofy looking L-shaped body. Okay. Now what happens is when the arm is installed, this is going to be a left hand is what they're showing here. When the arm is installed, the arm is, so that, there's just, when that arm is installed, it's actually biased in this sort of direction. If I was really exaggerating the installation, it's biased such that the door comes to an absolute positive close against the stop in the direction of close. So what happens is, when you, back to the client's images, that's not it, this is it, that's here. You will remove, I don't know how old this top pivot is. It's several decades. I'm going to imagine that you're going to loosen this set screw, and then you'll remove the top pin, the top spindle or pin. Before you do that, remove the arm cap cover and loosen your set screw holding the arm onto the shaft. You'll loosen it. You go back to the top pivot. You're going to probably loosen the set screw and you'll remove the top pin. At that point, the door is going to fall out of the opening. So you need to be, this is a two-person job. Someone's got to be controlling the door as you're removing it. It's going to fall out. When that comes out, what you'll then do is you're literally going to lift the door up and out, meaning off the bottom spindle, off of the spindle on the bottom, off of this, off of the closer body. You'll be able to lift it out, and that's how that comes off. But at that point, you've loosened that set screw, and even though there's a small amount of bias on the arm, maybe 3 degrees, it's very slight, you'll still be able to pull it off. The bottom line is you won't have any trouble with the tension that is the spring contained within the body by simply unhanging and rehanging the door. If you were trying to do this with the door open at 90 degrees, yeah, the closer body is going to want to make the spindle return to the closed position. But you'll be doing it with the door basically in the closed position, is how you do that. So there's no fear of hurting yourself really reasonably with this sort of installation. The real fear comes in hurting yourself, speaking from actual experience, is when you're trying to hang and unhang a door by yourself. So it's always a two-person job, regardless of age or physical fitness. The object is just too large and heavy to do it alone. And that's how it's done. There's really no reason that you're going to end up hurting yourself, because there is no, it's not like a torsion spring where there's all kinds of setting or winding to the spring at all. Just a small amount of bias in the closed direction. So I would proceed confidently, with caution, but confidently. If there's any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to us. My name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. Thank you.